Everyone tells you it's a compliment. You're so dependable. In teams, families, and entire communities, reliability is the gold star, the highest praise you can receive without uttering a word. But that praise is also the first link, and links form a chain. One promise leads to a pattern. The pattern becomes a part of your identity. Suddenly, you're the person people call because you always say yes. And the more you're praised for showing up, the less you're allowed to show your true self. We crave that status, the go-to person, the one who never drops the ball. It feels safe, neat, and predictable, approval on demand. Yet the same instinct that makes you dependable for others can quietly cause you to lose connection with yourself. Your diary fills up, your language shrinks to, "I've got it," and the parts of you that don't fit the role are quietly archived. Here's the dilemma. We see virtue and self-destruction as opposites. But what if unwavering reliability is just self-neglect dressed up well? What if the life that earns applause for being entirely predictable is the same life that no longer truly belongs to the person living it? In this episode, we'll tug on that thread, not to break reliability, but to discover what it's costing you. We don't become the reliable one by chance. It's psychology in plain sight, a combination of reward, training, and fear that shapes us into a role we mistake for a self. Reliability is the safest currency in the social economy. You put in effort and you get a predictable return: praise, trust, and access. It's an emotional transaction with almost no volatility. Unlike risky bids for admiration, talent, originality, charisma, reliability doesn't require being extraordinary. It requires being consistent. That consistency feels like control. When life is messy, we discover a lever we can actually pull. Show up, finish, repeat. The ledger balances in our favour. People thank us, include us, and rely on us again. Each thank you deposits a little proof that we matter. The loop is tight, the payout is immediate, and the habit is self-reinforcing. Most of us learn early that usefulness is the quickest way to belong. Be helpful, be quiet, be responsible, and see how adults respond positively. Somewhere along the line, "they love me" shifts to "they love that I make things easier." We adopt a simple rule: if I am helpful, I am safe. So we respond swiftly. We become quick responders, gap fillers, and chronic anticipators. We eliminate the delay between the request and the action because delays feel risky. Over time, availability appears as generosity, but the real motive is need, specifically the need to keep our self-worth intact through others' relief. The identity of the dependable person is not driven by generosity, but by anxiety. I must be this for you, or I cease to be myself. Once reliability becomes part of our identity, disappointing someone is no longer a fleeting mistake. It becomes an existential threat. A missed deadline isn't just "I slipped," it's "I am not who I claim to be." This fear makes us averse to anything that introduces variability. Being disorganized, experimenting, asking for help, arriving late, saying no. Spontaneity feels like sabotage. Boundaries feel like betrayal. We maintain a spotless record, not because perfection is admirable, but because imperfection is devastating. Reliability hardens into armor, and then into a cage. The fewer errors we make, the less freedom we grant ourselves. Eventually, we become a minimal variance version of ourselves, optimized for predictability, starved of oxygen. Put simply, external validation trains availability. Availability impersonates love, and fear cements the mask to the face. If you recognize yourself here, it's not a moral failure. It's a map of how you were rewarded, taught, and frightened into a role. The next step isn't to discard reliability, it's to reclaim authorship over when, how, and why you offer it. We like to think that the price of reliability is time. Late nights, calendar Tetris, one more task on the pile. The real cost is identity. The question is not how much you work, but how much of yourself you lose in the process. When reliability shifts from being practice to becoming persona, the self compresses until you are defined solely by function. You become what you are helpful for, not a person who can write, Someone who writes on demand, not a friend, an on-call solution. The shrinkage begins quietly. You shift interest to fill the slots others need filled. Choices cease expressing preference and start minimizing friction. You understand what will keep the system functioning, so you say yes to that. The algorithm is straightforward. Select the option that preserves your reputation. Over time, your range narrows. Hobbies are postponed until they no longer feel personal. Even joys are optimized for recoverability, easy wins that won't jeopardize tomorrow's output. Because everyone praises the result, the loss becomes hard to notice. Here's the paradox: the more dependable you become, the less freedom you feel. Your record of performance becomes a shackle. You start predicting your own compliance, agreeing because you already hear the future disappointment if you don't. Soon, the self is reduced to a collection of skills with polite notes about availability. The contradictory, surprising, and inconvenient parts of you are stored away in cold storage. Imagine a mirror that reflects a human with edges and mysteries. For the overly dependable, the mirror functions like a dashboard, dials, metrics, readiness indicators. You look for capacity, not curiosity. Are you charged, calibrated, cleared to deploy? The mirror ceases asking who you are and begins asking what you can produce. Because you've been rewarded for output, you pre-filter desire by utility. A desire that threatens throughput is marked as a defect. That painting class gets postponed until things calm down, which is code for never. In this permission economy, you quietly lose the right to pursue passions that cannot justify themselves to your function. The litmus test becomes, will this make me more useful? If not, the impulse is dismissed. Over time, this leads to confusion among the public. You can describe your capacity precisely, but struggle to answer the question, what do you want? Wanting feels decadent, suspicious. You forget that desire is not indulgence but navigation, the way a person steers a life that belongs to them. Reliability is often lauded as a moral virtue, and sometimes it genuinely is. But when every action is predetermined by the expectation that you will be dependable, where is the space for genuine moral choice? If you always say yes, is that virtue or mere automation? Ethics demands an agent capable of deliberating among real options. When the only allowed choice is to comply, you aren't truly choosing. You're following a script dictated by precedent and fear. The vacuum first appears in subtle ways. You return a favour, not because it is right, but because the ledger must be balanced. You volunteer not because you believe, but because that's what your role requires. You apologise, not to repair, but to maintain access. Over time, the drift becomes distance. You can be relied upon, but you are no longer present as a sovereign self. The cost accumulates, a restricted identity, a mirror reflecting only a machine, and a moral existence reduced to policy adherence. This is not a plea to be unreliable. It is a call to reclaim choice. Reliability can be a gift, but only if it is offered by someone who can also refuse. A yes that could have been a no-holds-barred significance. A yes that could never be otherwise is just a reflex. The effort is to reopen the space where your answer, whatever it is, truly belongs to you. We've mapped how reliability reduces a person to a function. Now we face the emotion that develops there. Resentment. It rarely erupts. It accumulates, quiet layers of anger around each unexamined yes. The resentment isn't directed at the people who ask. Most are reasonable, even grateful. The anger is aimed at the self that keeps offering what it lacks, the inner broker who signs contracts the body can't cash in on. Resentment starts as a whisper. I'm fed up with being the one who sorts this out. It turns into mental arithmetic. How many unseen favours keep this room functioning smoothly? How much of me was exchanged for applause today? Every time you ignore a no, you build up a debt payable by your future self. The interest is steep. Sleep costs more, joy costs more, patience diminishes. You begin to narrate your own goodness internally because you no longer feel it. Look how helpful I am. Look how essential. This anger is ethically confusing because it obscures acts that seem admirable. You delivered. You stayed late. Praise feels misplaced. The compliment acts like a receipt, proof that the transaction succeeded, not recognition of a gift. So you help while secretly punishing yourself for assisting. Over time, you start to distrust requests that would be acceptable if you had a choice. They begin to feel like traps, not because the request is wrong, but because your no is broken. We often see burnout as a fuel issue, too much effort, not enough rest. For the dependable individual, it's a question of identity, too much performance, not enough authenticity. You don't merely complete tasks, you act out a character called the dependable one, and the costume becomes heavier. You smooth out your mood's edges, show up at a 10 when you're genuinely a 4. The gap between how you present and the truth widens. Numbness sets in as a way to cope. It spares you the pain of dissonance by dulling everything. You stop wanting because desire would complicate the performance. This is the burnout of inauthenticity. Its symptoms aren't just exhaustion, they're leakage. Sarcasm is replacing kindness where it once resided. Micro delays that reveal what your words won't. Quiet sabotage, such as signing up late or forgetting to check the thread. Tiny rebellions to make the mask more breathable. None of this makes you a villain. It makes you human under pressure. But the cost is trust, beginning with confidence in yourself. If you can't rely on your yes to mean yes to you, you'll start to doubt every promise you make. A person who is consistently inauthentic cannot be fully effective in roles that demand presence. You might be a dependable resource and still lack sovereignty over yourself. That lack of presence carries ethical significance. Consent isn't only relevant to intimacy, it also applies to work, friendship, and attention. When you habitually give more than your limits allow, you engage in a subtle form of self-exploitation, and in doing so, you often unknowingly encourage others to do the same. People believe they are receiving your willing assistance. In reality, they are benefiting from help that is rooted in your fear. That distortion spreads. Partners feel cared for, but not truly fulfilled. Colleagues acquire skills without honesty. No signals when capacity is limited, no genuine renegotiation of scope. Friends receive responsiveness rather than intimacy. You exist there in body, but not in truth, like ghosting in place. And because you keep the system going, you end up with more to handle. Reliability creates greater demand, deepening the inauthenticity that started the cycle. The paradox is resolved only when reliability regains its core element: choice. Without the ability to say no, your yes becomes ethically ambiguous, compliant, perhaps helpful, but not entirely moral because it lacks agency. The key lesson is simple: to be genuinely good for others, stop betraying yourself on their behalf. Boundaries do not reduce your reliability, they affirm its truth. They transform performance into presence and tasks into relationships where both parties can trust what your answer truly signifies. The aim isn't to become unreliable, it's to make reliability your own. View dependability not as an identity to defend, but as a capacity to manage. You're not a public utility, you're a person with rhythms, limits, and values that merit first access to your time. Separate usefulness from worth. You are worthy before the inbox opens. Reliability is a gift you choose, not a debt you owe. When you anchor value in being a whole human, you can help without sacrificing yourself to the role that help creates. A principled no safeguards a meaningful yes. Practice 3 small steps. Pause before agreeing, assess the request against your capacity, and suggest a version you can support. This isn't selfish, it's stewardship. Boundaries don't diminish generosity, they channel it, so it manifests as presence, not resentment. Predictability without authorship is a prison. Be both reliable and self-guiding. The person whose yes is trustworthy because it could have been a no. Consider what you value more, the praise for being a perfect instrument or the quiet relief of being a whole human.